you can have competition. I think competition is a great little motivator, but it's your job as a counselor and as a camp to unpack how we win and lose and how we treat people being more important than the ultimate winning and losing. Think of those ways that games have kind of incentivized exploration and uncertainty and bring those into your everyday at camp.
This is First Class Counselors, another innovative podcast brought to you by Camp Hacker. First Class Counselors is dedicated to young and up-and-coming camp mavericks. By equipping and empowering our on-the-ground staff, camp directors can rest easy knowing that our campers are having the true life-changing experience that parents expect. Find our show notes and our blog for camp leaders and professionals at camphacker.tv.
Camp is about changing lives, not chasing paperwork. Ultracamp builds tools that make camp smoother for today's camp counselor and tomorrow's camp leader. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/firstclasscounselor.
Welcome to First Class Counselors, where we give camp counselors insider tips and advice on how to make a camper summer the best it can be.
And whether you are brand new to the camp world, or maybe you used to watch Saturday morning cartoons not on a streaming service, you know that growth mindset is built into the DNA of every great staff member, or as we say it here, every great first-class counselor.
My name is Oliver Gregan. I'm the Director of Camping Services for YMCA Camp Westwood with the Pawtucket YMCA in Coventry, Rhode Island. We are a rebuilding day camp that plans to introduce overnight camp.
My name is Matt Wilford. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the executive producer of podcasting and a consultant with Go Camp Pro.
Yeah, I think one of the favorite things that we do, Matt, is that you hint at what our topic's going to be in your intro every time. It's just a little like Easter egg right before we get to this. And today's show topic is about how every generation has its own different entertainment, right? If you spoke to our grandparents, they used to skip rocks in the river, after a hard day's labor of hiking back to school, uphill, downhill, right? And that's what it was. And then childhood in the 90s, maybe for myself, it was the likes of Pokemon, Power Rangers, and we snacked on some Pop-Tarts. It was like classic Saturday morning cartoon kind of deal. Harry Potter was really popular. Percy Jackson, I think, was kind of near the end of like my age group, my millennial guys. Hardy Boys a little bit more at the beginning, probably. I remember reading some investigative books with the boys. And then nowadays, kids have grown up with the access of internet in their hands, and the entertainment, the things that they watch, whether on TV or YouTube, which we'll get into, has changed. And one thing that is, I think, true is that a counselor who might know of these things or has a decent grasp of them might be able to connect with their campers a little bit better. So we're not saying you've got to go and watch an entire season of Paw Patrol, or you need to sit down and get some Bluey in. Although I will say that even as an adult, Bluey does the trick. Like, it is a great show. I've watched it with my niece and nephew. It's fantastic. The Power of Miss Rachel, if anybody has seen her, a child will instantly stop whatever they're doing when they hear her say hello on the TV. And then also, like, maybe a little bit of the older age groups, like we see like Mr. Beast and stuff like that coming into play. So these new entertainers, this new entertainment style, you can see a lot of what we've just talked about is digital, has changed for how kids entertain themselves and what they're interested in. And sometimes a powerful counselor has the ability to be able to connect and has that knowledge of what these things are. So that's what we're going to be talking today. So you can see a little bit of how those things have changed and what that might mean in the grand scheme for our campers. Now, Matt, you have a disclaimer before we go into our episode here. What is your disclaimer? What do you want people to know?
Yeah, so we're talking about pop culture and how it can and maybe can't be a connection point when it comes to working with kids as a camp counselor. And I need to say right up front that I am a 35-year-old man and I am basically a boomer when it comes to pop culture. My reference point to Bluey is high because I have a 2-year-old that has we're not doing too much screens, but Bluey comes on in those clutch moments and it's great. But I know really nothing about pop culture. So Oliver, we're both of kind of the same ilk. Oliver, I think you're a little more connected to what's cool these days. But what Oliver's going to really lay out some of the things that kids are experiencing in pop culture. I have no knowledge of that. But what I can tell you to do, and what I can help you with, is how you can respond to this and how you can use those to make connections and what to be aware of. And also, the underlying message here is that we want to make sure that camp remains a place that does not depend on pop culture. That pop culture actually doesn't interact with camp, and it shouldn't be any sort of foundational part of the camp experience. But we would be silly to say that it doesn't work its way into camp, because campers bring, sometimes literally in their bags, pieces of pop culture, whether it's the toys or the knowledge that they've gained from it. They're entering this space that is traditionally set aside from pop culture, and they're bringing some of that in. So you being able to be thoughtful about how you respond to it and how you interact with that and being intentional about it is what we really want to be the underlying message for this whole episode. So we're going to talk about how knowing these materials help you as a counselor. We'll talk about the world of YouTube and how that's going to affect the camp experience, how kids are playing differently these days, whether it's like digitally online video games or tactile toys. What does brain rot mean within the camp context? And ultimately, how does this affect our activities and our facilitation? So Oliver, I'll get you to kick it off, and I'll just sit here in my little like boomer corner, and I'll chime in with the like kids these days comments once it's my turn.
Yeah, don't worry. We're starting a little bit more with that airplane view, and I think you're going to be able to offer a lot more into this. And that's like, how does knowing these materials help you as a counselor? And Matt talked about it. Like sometimes these things end up in a backpack, but also sometimes your camp director makes it a theme of the week, right? They see the big movie that's coming out. Maybe like Minecraft has been this big thing. I know that there was just a Jack Black and Jason Momoa movie about it that came out, and kids are really into it. This video game's been around a while, and as time goes on, camps that might have a theme or something going on, you can't do the same theme that you were doing back in the early 2000s because it might not be relevant to the kids that are signing up. And parents know that, right? Like you might be able to play with a theme like a parent liked. And they're trying to like, ooh, we can send my kid to the camp week that is, Percy Jackson themed because I love those books as a kid and I want to make sure my kids get that experience. That's true, but at the same point in time, right? Camps are going to try and adapt a little bit to appeal to what kids might be looking for. So, if you see that there's a Frozen week or a Disney movie week that's coming up, it's good for you to understand like the Disney that maybe you watched is maybe a bit different than the Disney they grew up on, right? Like I grew up with Aladdin, Pocahontas, Little Mermaid, like that core, I think they called it the Silver Age of Disney or something like that. And if you go and talk to a kid nowadays, like even Frozen is an older movie, which is crazy to me because I thought that was the freshest, newest thing. But it's like over a decade old now, and kids are starting to move on. Like they still sing along, but like Moana is kind of a bigger deal. And I know that there's other Disney movies we might get into in a little bit, but I think that's that relevancy of what's going on. And something that I say is a big reason why the majority of time counselors are, between that 18 to 24 for many camps is because you're within that 10-year gap that allows you to really connect with your campers. So some of these things are not that foreign to you. Like you may have just missed them, and going back and learning on them will really help you connect. I think also too, for when you're facilitating or explaining something, you're able to reference these things, right? You can say, hey, this is the situation that so-and-so was in that movie. Or if you're facilitating an activity, something that I really think that I'm trying to bring into is like, how did Mr. Beast explain his games? They're typically simple, they're to the point. The challenge is very easy to understand. So Mr. Beast is actually a fantastic facilitator, and his method of going about it and the challenges he creates are very entertaining and kind of a good thing to steal. So being able to reference or use maybe some of those different things that are out there, I think are going to be really useful for you as a counselor. So a lot of times you'll hear a director say something like, oh, we have to make things like a TikTok video, like 7 seconds long, and these attention spans are really short. And they're not wrong. Like it's not completely something that's out of the picture. But at the same time, like some of these, like a Mr. Beast video is sometimes 30 minutes long. The kids do have an attention span, but if you watch, the videos are just quicker in their explanation. It's the shot is 7 seconds, but the video is still 30 minutes. So if you're out there doing an activity for an hour, you can still entertain kids the whole time. It's just you got to understand that you're breaking that into a lot of smaller bits that maybe a previous generation of counselors had to. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my points for like why this material is going to help you out. It gives you the ability to connect references and then a stronger facilitation skill if you know some of this stuff and you're watching it and you're keeping yourself even on a baseline. Matt, what about you from this like airplane view do you think is going to be super helpful about having knowledge of kind of pop culture for kids?
Yeah, I want to start by saying like talking and connecting with kids is hard. It's not a natural skill that everyone has, and it's something that takes a lot of effort. And I think we've done past episodes. I'll get Ryan to toss some past episodes in the show notes here, but like how to connect with kids, all that kind of stuff. But it's not easy. And pop culture is kind of an easy way to bridge that gap sometimes. That if a kid is really passionate about something in pop culture, it's an easier connection point. I think in my boomer heart here is that I think we should strive to be better than pop culture, that we shouldn't use it. But honestly, I've used it too. Sometimes I use it to connect. So I want to give you kind of again, my bias about it, but here are some of the ways that you can kind of be thoughtful about interacting with it and not, and how it helps you as a counselor. So a couple quick fire ideas here. So the goal, like Oliver said, it's not to be the expert. It's about helping you relate, right? It's about helping you make those connections. So surface level is totally okay. But even better is using these as springboards, as ideas for connections, conversation starters, or games. And so, better than being an expert on something is also helping making those connections by being curious about what kids are really passionate about, what they love, asking really good follow-up questions like, hey, what do you like about that, or like, tell me about this thing. And just letting kids talk about what they're passionate about helps them feel more comfortable in a space. And then I think the next level is using that knowledge to help kids connect over common interests, because we've said this many times in the show. Our job as counselors isn't to make the camp experience about us. It's about them creating those great connections and having great experiences. So even better, if you can use pop culture to connect kids with each other, I think that's like a next level thing. Now, a couple caveats to that. Obviously, we need to know what is and isn't appropriate. Kids come to camp knowing a lot more than they used to, because the internet has given them, an abundance of ideas, both good and bad, about, like the manosphere is something that we are fighting really hard against, because we know how harmful it is. We know that like pranks and things like that get a lot of engagement online. So we know that we have to at least know that when conversations are starting to go down those roads, we have to redirect. We have to bring people back to, what are the values of camp? What do we care about here? It's also helpful to remember that not everyone has access to the same media. And whether that's because of things like internet access, or their culture at home, what their parental limitations are. And so we can't just rely on it, because it's not fair to assume that kids are coming with that prerequisite knowledge, and it can make them actually feel like outsiders if they don't have that knowledge. And I think you as a counselor need to be really aware that kids can't, they might not advocate for themselves and say, hey, I don't really know what's going on. So you need to actually put yourself as the newbie, so that other kids can teach each other and be good, inclusive folks for each other in the cabin. And again, camp is that ultimate connecting force. So steering the conversations towards the camp experience and what's happening is always going to help. But making sure you're really aware how using pop culture includes and excludes kids as part of the conversation and social dynamics in your cabin.
Yeah, Matt, you got me thinking about how like pop culture has this almost exclusivity of the knowledge of it, and connecting that back to almost the microculture of camp when new campers arrive and they don't know all the
Right.
camp songs and all that stuff. It's almost the same thing, right? And that ability to educate somebody about what that culture is or what those references are is really important to make sure you don't leave someone out of the loop and make them feel like someone is left out. Even as a counselor, even sometimes when you know something, right? Like I know I've watched every episode of Bluey, right? But letting that 5-year-old walk you through what their experience was watching Bluey and what they saw and their understanding of it, really does allow you. And you just kind of, I don't want to say play dumb or play stupid, you could be like, oh, I haven't seen that episode, or I don't, that's not what I was thinking about. Can you tell me a little bit more? It gives you opportunity to connect. And not only that, but gives that camper the opportunity to do something where they feel like they're educating you, they're teaching you, they have knowledge, they're becoming independent, they're becoming more of their own individual person. It's a huge moment for kids when they get to this stage where they recognize like, oh, I understand things too. I know stuff that I can share. And I think that pop culture offers that opportunity too. And you can definitely take advantage of it when there's something that you expect, maybe you don't know. I still don't understand Roblox and Minecraft. I'm not a video game person. It's never been my thing. Maybe like a little bit in college, but like it's gone for me. And I have probably sat there 100 times and said like, oh, I don't really. Can you explain skins to me? Can you like, do you collect what and what? How? I don't. Right? Just that alone gives these kids this. Oh my God, you don't know about skins? Let me tell you about it. So like, you've got to earn them, but you could also pay for them, and then you earn these token points. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like this is just, I'm thinking completely about something else. I'm trying to understand what they're talking about, but they're so excited to be able to share this thing with you. And I think that's one of the great forces that comes from this pop culture that we're talking about today. As we continue into the show, one of the things that we want to kind of focus on too is how this world has changed for how they entertain themselves. And one thing that I really want to point out that's changed, and we're calling it like the YouTube world, but it's this streaming world, the ability to have the ability to watch somebody else doing something readily available at any time, right? Like, well, I grew up in a generation where like you had to be home if you wanted to watch your TV show at a certain time, and if you didn't catch it, you didn't get to watch it. Sometimes there'd be a rerun on like the weekend or something, but nowadays with streaming and everything, that's completely changed. You can watch whatever show you want at any time you want, and that availability, is instant gratification in its own right. That's a whole conversation to this, but it also means that we have a pretty strong what I call watching culture. So we have a generation who's growing up, maybe not experiencing things, but seeing things, right? They see, and we'll use some pretty lame examples here, but they see someone change a tire and they think like, oh, I could do that. That's pretty easy. But they've never done that action before. They see someone kick a soccer ball over and over and over again. They've watched it happen 1,000 times on a screen, but they're not going out and practicing 3, 5, 6 days a week like maybe a former generation was. And that's not me going out there and saying these guys are lazy, they need to practice more. That's not. I'm saying that, the kid who wants to go play soccer is going to play soccer, but there's also a developing group of kids who are not the soccer players, who are developing these experiences through watching, not through experience. And that means that there's some skills that are getting left out on. One of the big things that I do with my staff, as I say, how many hours a week do you spend streaming through TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever? And that may be sometimes up to about 2 hours a night, and you do that for a full year. How many hours is that have been spent doing this activity that is quick, satisfying to your brain, but not really practice oriented? That could have been probably going towards something else. And everybody needs their time to relax and take a moment, but we do see that the skill sets of our counseling team and of kids as they're growing up is lagging behind, right? I never would have thought that having to teach fire building was going to be a core thing I have to do every single summer with my staff team. I was just so natural for me when I was a counselor, and there was nobody I remember in my counseling like group that struggled with it. We all just like, oh yeah, we need a fire. Let's go start. And now, as a director, if I go, hey, can you guys start the fire for s'mores? I get, 6 to 10 counselors who look at me with blank eyes and go, I've never started a fire before in my life, right? So there is a definite skill set there that's coming from this watching culture where maybe they're not getting as many experiences as probably had. The next things that I kind of want to go into is a little bit of what these things are. So in this YouTube world, I love watching Mr. Beast. I think he's a great example of kind of this modern entertainment for kids. And he's creating these giant challenges that are very simple to understand. There's a giant prize, and he sets it up so that throughout stages, there's weight to the decisions that have to be made by the contestants, right? It almost goes back to like kind of classic Survivor, which is, they would extend for 23 episodes and a full season, and he does it in about 30 minutes. And some of his challenges are 100 days long, right? I think he challenged a gentleman to be in this gym for like a year, a full 365 days, or until he could lose 100 pounds. And then there was a prize money that he got. That's a really long extended period of time that took up this man's life, and they shrink it down to a really short amount of time. What does that mean for kids is, that gratification of what's the finished product, what is this going to be, the process is getting lost sometimes. So when you're going to run a game or set up, like get into your zipline gear, whatever it might be, their mindset is, oh, we're going to go zipline. I'm going to be on the zipline any second now. But then you go through, oh, okay, here's your gear. This is the safety. This is how you put it on. This is what you need to do. This is how it's got to be tight. All of a sudden, what you realize is a zipline is 20, 30 seconds maybe of a turn, yet they just spent 20, 30 minutes getting geared up with 15 other kids. So the image of what they have in their head from watching Mr. Beast and his challenges or whatever other things on the internet, where you skip the process, your how-to videos are, sanding a board takes 20 minutes. You saw it happen in 10 seconds. Or you have that piece of fruit and they hit it with a knife and it just falls into pieces, right? Even the cutting and cooking is disappearing. How long you're boiling something for. These are all things that are on videos that they're starting to miss. The other thing too is sometimes they're not even interacting with it. They might be watching somebody else. So the streamer digital. So something that I've started doing is we have kids who want to sit out of activity because they want to do it, but something that they love doing is watching it. They just want to watch some other kid play Gaga. They want to watch some other kid do these things. So that's almost an activity in itself. And I think this comes from like a lot of the streaming that's going on too. And then I think something that is getting a little bit more part of these videos is there's a lot of foreshadowing. There's a lot of hints or sneak peeks and building of anticipation for what's going to happen. And that's how these videos are designed. And I feel like you need to start doing this in your camp so that you can keep these kids and their attention drawn in, because sometimes you'll have a camper who is just completely disinterested because you've told them exactly what you're going to go do. Oh, we're going to archery, right? But as they're not excited about because you just told them. Now you've got to try to say, okay, we're going to be doing a program here where you're going to launch something. Can you tell me what you think that might be, right? You've got to get their brain working a little bit. You got to get them anticipating what might be happening. You're going to say, the next activity we're going to has targets, right? The next activity that we're going to be going to is over 10,000 years old, right? You're setting this stage, you're creating this anticipation, you're making them wonder what they might be going to. And it gives you conversation as you're walking down the path to get to where you need to go too, right? Like it is its own form of entertainment to keep things going. Matt, I've talked a lot about this YouTube world. I hope they set the stage really well for you coming into it. But what are some of the things that you're thinking about when it comes to some of these things that I just talked about, this internet world that kids are now entertaining themselves with?
I think you hit on a lot of the really big points, and I think it's really thoughtful to consider how, people like Mr. Beast creates his videos and you lose the like behind the scenes content. I mean, behind the scenes content is out there on YouTube. Like people like watching how the sauce is made, but not nearly as much about just watching the thing for it is. So the only thing I wanted to really pick up on from what I've seen in my limited experience is that when we were kids and watching stuff, we were watching like cartoons produced by that. There wasn't a lot of like the hosts that were presenting stuff to us when we were kids, at least. There was like YTV in Canada and like maybe like MTV had like a video DJ or something like that. But now everybody can be a content creator, right? If you're on Twitch or on YouTube, your channel is about you. It's like you get ready with me in the morning, you watch me unbox toys, like I'm going to show you my talents, even if they aren't like, even if I'm not the best singer, people are posting themselves because that kind of like authentic follow me along culture is there. So I think where that's actually really positive is that kids might be actually more comfortable taking on leadership roles if they're not, even if they're not like super amazing at something. They're willing to like make mistakes and be authentic, and we should encourage that. So making sure that like talent shows are opportunities that maybe if your camp doesn't do a talent show, can you do one in your cabin, or can you let kids like explain how they're setting the table at lunch, or presenting the dessert in a fancy way, or like arranging the food on their plates in a neat way, like giving opportunities for their individuality to shine. I think really works well with this like Twitch content creator generation that they're coming into. And then I think a lot, because they have seen the Mr. Beasts and the Mark Robers and those types of people, helping unpack, what makes those videos engaging, and in conversation with them, like, why was this so cool? Or what made you keep watching? Why did you want to do that? And then asking them the question, especially with older campers, how can we do that at camp? How can we do that type of thing in a game? Do you want to set up like what Mr. Beast is doing in a lot of his videos that I've seen? He's just making really well produced obstacle courses. Right? And there's like $1 million stakes to who can do this obstacle course without stepping on the like pool noodle. You can make those types of things at camp, but do them in the campy environment that helps connect with the natural world. And I think using it again as a jumping off point, you're not trying to recreate a Mr. Beast video, but you're using and helping kids think critically about what they're consuming and reproducing the best parts about it. Now, you don't have to take all the things about it. Like, I think, depending on who the content creator is or whatever they're watching, I think there's a lot of things in there that we'll talk about later that you might like throw away from those videos, the way that they approach competition, or the way that they treat other people in those videos, or how like pranking is a big part of that culture. You're going to have to steer them away from those influences and again reconnect them with camp. But it's not about replicating, it's about taking the best from it and then integrating it into the camp environment.
I love the Mark Rober shout out because I'm definitely a Mark Rober fan. Anytime you can check Mark Rober out, you guys. I think I've used him as an E.G.E.L as well. Just like
sure.
His videos are great and they're educational. And you could definitely, he ran like a digital summer camp during COVID. So I firmly believe he's one of us in a way. He's a little bit of a summer camp guy in his own secret way. So shout out for Mark. Also, if he wants I don't know, come on the show, that'd be really cool. I don't know. I'm a huge
Mono for Mark.
Yeah, but like kind of getting into it too is we're seeing these different materials. Like we're seeing that the entertainment style is a little bit more digital. So it's created a very big difference in play, right? And like if you go through the history of play, right, it used to be like go out to the street and play, and then 90s it almost became more like, well, you've got to join the team to go play. Like if you want to go play soccer, you got to be on a team. Like there's a travel team, right? And it's elevated since then, and there's become a little bit more of an extreme to how people can get into an organized group of play. It's not just pick up any longer. In fact, there's that crazy statistic that I think I see floating around all the time, and I'll get it wrong, but the distance of play from one's home has dramatically changed. At one point in time, it was 5 miles that a kid would play on average away from their house. They'd hop on a bike and go see stuff. And now this difference in play is that the average kid is 50 feet from their bedroom or something like that. So which is wild to think about that difference in distance. And it's because they have access to their friends and their entertainment right there, right? It is readily accessible in their house. So if you kind of break down some of these plays, if you're looking at video games, a huge difference is, in the 90s when we were playing Mario, you were going through a concrete level, right? You'd be playing Mario and, you'd have 3 lives and you died and you have to start over again, right? But like you would be constantly problem solving through one instance, where now a lot of the video games that kids play, whether it's Roblox or Red Dead Redemption or some of these other games that have changed. Remember, I'm not a video game guy. They're an open world. You are running around everywhere. There is no direction. It is problem solving in this space, which is phenomenal for their growth, but it's still within a contained and developed environment. I know a lot of people were really interested in what AI will do to video games in the future, but I think one of those big things is that these games are either fast play, right? So, a Roblox round may only last about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then it's right into the next one. very similar to those third person or first person shooter games that were really popular in the early 2000s, where like things got a little bit faster. And another big change is that, there used to be the split screen, right? There used to be like Matt and I right now are in a split screen doing this, but we are very far apart. You used to be sitting next to your buddy playing these video games. I remember running an Ethernet cord down my college dorm so that we could all connect our TVs and be able to play. Like you could, if you were playing Mario Kart, you could shove your buddy to gain an advantage in Mario Kart. Not, saying that's allowed, but it was possible if you were doing it. So in these games, like now you are on a headset, you are miles apart from this person that you're playing with. You're still getting interaction. There's still this social part, but you're not interacting face to face. You're not seeing the body language of somebody else in front of you. You're not seeing their facial expressions. These are all things that have changed in some of this play, and especially with becoming predominantly a digital form of play. Another thing too is, what does physical play look like versus this digital play? Something that I think about at camp all the time is we may say like, hey, we're going to go do fort building or shelter building, right, for survival or whatever it might be. And the collection of materials, how to attach it, how to create the structure, the engineering behind it is definitely a skill set. And, if you take that and you combine it or you compare it to the Minecraft building, like, yes, Minecraft has you go out and find resources and all this, but there's no assembly, right? You were just taking a block, putting it on a block, or you take an ingredient, and then magically Minecraft puts the two things together for you. Those processes are not something that you're a part of. They just kind of happen. Whereas in the real world, when I take two sticks and I try to lean them against each other, they're going to fall, right? I need to learn about the gravity, the physics, I need to see those things in action. I need to know if I need to tie a rope around them to hold them tight. I need to know how to tie that knot, right? Those are all skill sets that come from this type of play creation that happens when we're in real life.
Hey, First Class Counselors listeners, listen up. Ultracamp has a free resource just for you. That's right, the frontline staff. The Counselor's Survival Checklist, packed with tips on communication, time management, camper care, all of those practical things that we talk about on the podcast all the time. Great counselors often become great directors, and the habits you build now will set you up for that path. Ultracamp is designed to make camp life easier. Things like keeping schedules and assignments organized, helping leaders communicate clearly with staff, making sure families stay informed so that you can focus on the campers. When camp runs smoothly, you can grow into the leader you were meant to be. Check it out at ultracampmanagement.com/firstclass.
So I talked a little bit about the social, I talked a little bit about that physical. Matt, what are some things that you see as a difference in play now in kind of some of this modern stuff?
Yeah, I want to really pick up on the idea of like the open worldness. Now, I am a bit of a video game guy, so I think, Oliver, you're right. Red Dead Redemption, like think of the new Zelda games that are out there, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Open world games are like a hugely popular genre.
Matt. All right,
Okay,
show it.
So, but I do think that there's opportunity here, whether it's a day camp or even like if it's in a college or university setting. I think giving them the opportunity to explore and take more time to do activities like a fire building session. Like I used to be able to like bang out a great fire building session in 45 minutes. There's no way you could do that anymore because you're right, Oliver. They need time to like experiment and make mistakes and snuff their fire out. And because those skills have like atrophied, it takes more time. The other side of it, I'll use like the education word is gamification to take something and make it into a bit more of a game and engage them in it. So giving them structured ways to freely explore and give lots of opportunities to discover and find those little like checkpoints. So when you're playing Zelda or like any open world game, you're not just like going from point A to B and nothing happens. The game still keeps you playing because there's like side quests that unlock, or you're like finding collectibles along the way. So you can integrate that into all of your sessions, especially nature sessions. I think like getting kids to explore the outdoors and like being curious, and if you can hide things in advance and give them little like sub quests of how they need to interact with the world and like do rubbings of certain tree bark. I'm all for creating some new nature programs out there if anyone wants to hire me to do it for them. But you can do that yourself. The other thing is, if you're gamifying your sessions, it's really just instead of, you're learning the basic archery skills, that's important. But once kids know how to even somewhat shoot a bow, there's opportunities there. How can you like level up? How can you unlock new abilities or, skills and equipments? Or maybe you've hidden like a deck of cards behind the archery target. And halfway through the session, you reveal, oh my goodness, we have hit this number of cards. Or like, check this out. Someone left this like hidden message for us. And now we've hit the 6 and the 7, if you want to, I don't know if 6 and the 7 is still going to be a thing, but if that's a thing, you've hit those cards. What other ones do we need to hit to unlock the code to do this thing later on at camp? Like, just think of those ways that games have kind of incentivized exploration and uncertainty and bring those into your everyday at camp. And the other thing I want to share too is that video games, especially video games, but like content creation, this happens too. I think winning and losing has become even more prominent in like the general cultural space. It was just kind of sports before, but now because everything is like gamified online, we see winning and losing being like the ultimate goal in everything all the time. And I think it's our obligation as a camp, whether you're a sports camp or you're not, is to, you can have competition. I think competition is a great little motivator, but it's your job as a counselor and as a camp to unpack how we win and lose and how we treat people being more important than the ultimate winning and losing. And I'll give you a really concrete example of the way that I did this at my home camp. We were designing some camps call it color wars or color games or Olympics or whatever. And if you're doing something like this, we created a point structure that really lived that value of winning and losing not being the only thing. So in any competition or in any game, it was 2 points for the team who won the event, 1 point for the loss. And then there was also something we called the Green Giant point. So the Green Giant point, the Green Giants it was like the Blue Dragons or the Red Dragons and the Blue Knights. And then the Green Giants were like the convener of the game. So it was red versus blue with green being the referees essentially. Now the Green Giant point was worth the same in the point structure as that 2 for the win, 1 for the loss. But every team or both teams had the opportunity to get a Green Giant point. And you got the Green Giant point if you were living the values of the games, which was like respecting each other, winning and losing with integrity and grace, like whatever the values were, both teams had the opportunity. Both teams had the opportunity to get that point. So that means that a team who won but were jerks about it don't get the Green Giant point. They can only get the 2 points for the win. And a team that lost, if they lost with grace and they played with integrity and they encouraged each other, whatever that looked like, they could get 2 points and like tie in the grand scheme of things. And like people rolled their eyes a little bit about it for the first time, but now we're like 10 years into color games at my home camp. And that is a core part of the games, is that Green Giant points are just as important to really value the games in there. And like realistically, almost all the time, Green Giant points are gotten. But, if things get out of hand, that's a very like natural gamified consequence in that structure there as well. And it's how we separate ourselves in the camp world from the like everyday pop culture world.
Yeah, I know, like here at the Y, I've always run with our color wars. It's honesty, respect, responsibility, caring, and spirit, right? So like those are ways you can gain extra points during our color wars that have nothing to do with the gameplay, right? And I also think like we talk a little bit about like everything is competition, and sometimes with this gamification, there's also competition against yourself, and that's that leveling up feature. So understanding like, okay, well, we eliminated competition. Okay, that's great, but a camper, a kid still sees them leveling up their ability, right? Like if you say that you gamify archery and hitting the target, right, then hitting the bullseye, these are all leveling up. But the problem sometimes that comes with this is even though they might not be directly competing with another camper, they still in a way are. They are competing at what level they are compared to their peers, and they're competing with themselves on what they've been previously doing in the past. So just note that like that gamification is always going to have some type of competitive nature to it, right? Of this comparison that is going to be coming in there as well. And that's something I like. I try to be aware of when we gamify things at camp, is that, which is why we have more of storytelling weeks versus competitive weeks, and we try to make those things happen too.
I want to quickly just like, I think language is so important too. And what I like, Oliver, you're drawing out is you're saying that kids are naturally going to live their lives not in competition, but in comparison, right? And comparison is not competition. And I think that's okay that we call that out. And the way we compare at camp isn't saying, like, the way that we can change the narrative there isn't saying that, oh, this person's better or worse than me. This person is really great at this, or this person could really teach me something about this, right? We have the opportunity to flip that narrative and not make comparison about competition, but make comparison about like celebrating and teaching. And I think that's the power. That's pretty crunchy and takes a lot of work. But again, you as a camp counselor intervening in those moments and saying, when a kid goes like, oh, that person's so much better than me at archery, you can say, man, they're really good. That's really awesome. I wonder what they're doing that is really helping them be so awesome. Or saying that, like, well, do you want to ask them and maybe they can show you? Or later on, you can prompt that camper to do some teaching later on at a future session. So comparison versus, I'm going to be chewing on that for the rest of the day, but.
No, I think that's a great point too. Something that I do want to, like, really quick points for this difference in play is, one is I wanted to quickly mention, I think, a change that's happened in toys as well. For kids who grew up, with Power Ranger action figures or Batman, right? Or, a doll, whatever it might be, or like the little kitchen that you could cook at. These toys have not disappeared completely. They're still around. There's still kids who use them, right? Like blocks, Legos, still all part of the base of toys. But something that's changed for, I think, Gen Z has the introduction of aesthetic or sensory-based toys, fidgets, slimes, the silicone poppets, stretchy toys, kinetic sand. While these squishmallows, right? These toys they're a break from what we've traditionally seen, where a lot of the times toys are a reflection of kind of life, right? Like the original doll was mildly to teach how to care for another person, right? You have to take care of your doll, right? It's a social interaction with the doll, right? That your action figure goes on missions, right? Batman has to save the day. Like, you play out scenes in your head. And then there's been this change that, like, now we have fidgets, right? And now we have the silicone pop toys. We do slime, kinetic sand, where, like, kinetic sand for me was the sand. Like, it was just sand. Like, you just play in dirt. Like, I dug holes in the backyard. That was fun time. How deep can you dig a hole? So there's been this change with what toys are coming out with nowadays compared to, like, what once was. And I think that's an important thing to understand. Is I think sometimes these are to help access or help alleviate maybe anxiety, or for attention, right? Or for that need, that tactile need to touch something. And I think that's changed a little bit. The other thing too is a lot of the TV shows are now, like, especially animations, are highly satisfying for visual and auditory stimuli. They are designed that way. They are speaking in a higher inflect pitch. They are quick, loud sentences. Like, the volume that you put your TV on is highly controllable, but also, what was maybe a 50% volume for when I was growing as a kid is now a 75% volume for kids growing up. The shows have just literally made themselves ladders to gain attention. And I think too, a lot of the things you might be watching, whether it's Bluey or Paw Patrol or Cocomelon, right? All these things are heavily themed around EQ. They are dealing with sometimes difficult situations. And that is not to say that Avatar: The Last Airbender did not deal with difficult situations. Please, great TV show that everybody should watch, child or adult. But the core purpose of a lot of these shows, and the creators of this, are intentionally saying, no, we made this episode of Bluey to teach kids how to deal with loss. We made this episode of Bluey to teach kids how to understand that they might not be a part of this situation, that they might feel left out. Like, a lot of these shows are starting to go down that route to to focus on emotional intelligence. So I think some of those things are a little bit of a change. And Matt, is there anything on these categories that you would want to just touch on?
Well, picking up on the types of toys, right? It's the difference between a Lego kit and Lego for building Lego's sake, right? It's imaginative play versus like the toy is what it is and it's for that function. And with I've been seeing obviously like toddler toys in those these days, and I really try to give my kiddo the opportunity for imaginative play wherever I can. So I wonder if we're making a shift back towards that. But like when you see like a Labubu doll or those types of things, it's kind of just like it's to have the thing, just not so much to do something with it, but it's like a status piece. So I don't know, camps are navigating that for sure, but it's also the difference between like making a craft versus going to a maker space at a camp. I know camps that like a camp that I worked at completely ditched their arts and crafts program. They're like, we're not making things anymore. We're giving kids things to make things. And we might have a couple examples like sitting on a shelf of like, hey, I made this with the found materials that are here today for those kids who want the structure. But I think really encouraging folks to be curious and not always have like the perfect thing in mind when they're creating, because even if we go back to like the content that people are consuming, it's often like, hey, I'm gonna make this thing, or like I'm gonna do this style, and the goal is like this very clearly laid out thing. So we have to push against that a little bit and be okay with like uncertainty and exploration, because we know that that's really good for kids and how we can again kind of set camp apart from what they might be used to in their everyday.
I think that's such a great point of a little bit of how we're changing that facilitation to, right? Like of that structure versus unstructured creation. And, you remember growing up as a kid and you'd make like the mud kitchen, right? And I've seen mud kitchens are coming back. Like some camps are trying to build them. If you don't know what a mud kitchen is, it's literally like some form of a tabletop and mud. That is a mud kitchen, right? Like you grab some grass, you stick it in there, you see what happens, right? And that's a thing that's coming back. And I definitely don't deny it, but it's strange when you walk into, I think, like maybe a childcare center, a little bit less of that outdoorsy kind of camp, and you see a lot more of these fidgets or kind of entertainment tools instead of, in the place of kind of what you'd expect a toy to be there. And with that change of facilitation, right, what are some things that we're doing as camp professionals with all these changes we see? Like, I think having reveals, right, being able to have that moment of surprise is really big. These competition-based games, I think, have been really popular online. It's a great way to get kids' attention. We've talked about that. I think having a loud projected voice, having that confidence to be up there on stage and change your pitch so that people pay attention, right, makes things a lot easier. And you're just emulating what kids are seeing online so that they maintain attention because it's what they're used to. They're a little bit more prepared for that. And Matt, what are some other things that you would say you can do restructuring maybe activities or facilitation that we haven't talked about yet that might be a great way to help you out as a camp counselor this summer?
And it's funny because I think this is where me being a boomer might actually help, is like good facilitation has always done those things. Reveals, right? Using a loud voice, changing your pitch, changing how close you are to campers. Like we've talked about that stuff for years. So I would encourage folks to go back to our episode about facilitation, because a lot of, things that are going to help. I think we did talk even about like how pop culture and the media kids are consuming, is important to consider. So there's a bunch of tools there. So I tried to pick some ones that I don't think I mentioned before. So one of them is just really chunk the information that you're giving kids. Their attention spans are shorter, so you can't give them 5 minutes of rules and expect them to understand all the rules of a game. So it's like I give no more than 3 points that they need to know, and then I check for their understanding. Or it's like 3 points to go and do this next thing, and then 3 points to go and do this next thing, and I'm checking their understanding all along the way to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because they like ADHD or not, as someone who has ADHD, like paying attention for longer than 3 things is really complicated and really hard these days. It's just the way it is. There's no point like lamenting or trying to fight against that. We want people to be successful, so we need to make sure we're teaching to the level of comprehension that folks have. Also, like in that attention span thing, if you are debriefing or processing an activity, whether it's like a ropes course or a team building or anything, just you have to remember that the like big sit in a circle debriefs that, you know, that Oliver, you and I might have been trained to facilitate and ask thoughtful questions and those types of things, you're going to need more opportunities for them to be engaged. Facilitation is like almost all about making sure that folks are engaged and intentional in the process. So giving opportunities in your debrief to, you know, process on their own, give them tangible, like tactile processing tools or partner processing where they ask questions of each other so that people aren't just sitting in a circle waiting for maybe their chance to talk because they might not do it. And just keeping in mind that the way that people are focusing on things, we need to be a little bit more explicit about what we're doing and like kind of being secretive or not so much using sarcasm, but like not being direct about things isn't going to work for as many audiences, especially staff. I remember reading something, I'm sure people know about this, but they are writing TV shows now, more like adult TV shows, but they're writing shows with it in mind that people are on their phones as they're watching shows. So they're dumbing down the plot and characters are being much more explicit about like, oh, they were dating this person. And then like 2 minutes later, they'll be like, yeah, they were dating this person. They're just being so much more on the nose about how they're writing shows. And it makes me so sad that that's where we're at, that like they're catering to that. But I think it's just about us being aware that we can make Camp Magical with great themes and stories and those types of things, but we got to be a little bit more on the nose about maybe how we're explaining those plot points.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few significant others who have the partner who doesn't pay attention as well, and now they don't have to be explaining the plot of the movie as much, who are probably thankful about that, or probably really frustrated that they have to be like, you've already explained this the 5 times. Why are we doing this again? So for all those who pay attention to movies pretty intensely, we'll see how you like this change and how things are going. But I think a lot of great points today. I think having a small grasp on pop culture, I think helps a lot. It's not necessary. You could live under a rock and make that cool. You know, your kids come out and you're the woods guy. Be that person. I think at the end of the day, you being who you are as a counselor is going to be the best type of person you can be for the kids, right? These are just ways for you to understand the changing times and the change of what kids are experiencing when they're not at camp, which is a huge thing that you as a counselor have to understand, that these kids come from a world that is not always the sunshine and rainbows and the fun, exciting parts of camp. So, I mean, this is just hopefully a positive way that you can get a hold of it. Hopefully Matt and I didn't get too down the weeds about our soapboxes and kids these days. But with that being said, we do finish our show every day with an E.G.E.L. So ever growing, ever learning. So this is a trick, a tip, game, or song for counselors to use to be better every day. Matt has already made fun of me for the one I have chosen. I went with, for you guys who know, the like Mio. It's like the little squirt bottle. You put it into like your water bottle and it flavors your drinks for you. And yes, I will say that if you bring a Mio, bring enough to fill everyone's water bottle, right? It's a nice little treat, especially for trip to counselors. But I agree with Matt. I'm not a huge fan of the counselor who just secretly pulls it out of their pocket and squirts it into their water bottle just so they can be drinking something. And then the kids catch them, and you shouldn't be putting it into kids' drinks either, but without like, you know, it being like the thing that you have at your disposal, right? So I say trips counselors, great tool on trail to have a nice little like pink lemonade when out there on your 3rd day of the trip and everyone's been drinking boiled water. But if you're like a on-camp counselor, maybe this is a treat for you when the kids have gone to bed or something like that, not something that's getting pulled out every single lunch because you don't want to keep drinking water and you've gotten bored of it. So, or bug juice isn't your thing anymore. Matt, what is your E.G.E.L for today? Or do you want to give me a little soapbox on your feelings about Mia?
No, we don't always have to agree on our angles. That's okay. That's different strokes for different folks. That's fine. No, I'd be lying if I said it when I didn't have in the staff lounge my own like little. They were, I don't remember what they were like the powder form when they first came out, but our camp director was very firm on us not having those except in the staff lounge. So that was fine. My goal is a game that I invented using, you can use a specific tool for it, or any ball that skips off the water is how you're going to play this game. And there's two that kind of follow the same concept. So I'll in the show notes, I put a link to those like water bouncing balls. They're those kind of, they come in different sizes, but they're meant to bounce off the water. And the two games that you can play that I think I've invented, I don't know, it's not very creative, but it's a fun game. It's called Wave Ball or Gate Ball. So I'll explain. Essentially, the concept is you're throwing the ball at your partner who is like, pretty far away from you, and it has to skip off the water. And the goal is that your partner touches it, but doesn't catch it. So that's wave ball. And playing with waves is super fun because it makes the ball bounce in weird places. You can play it with like a volleyball or a football, anything that bounces off the water. But if your partner misses it, then it's like, and it's a reasonable throw, then and it's not a reasonable throw. If it's like out of their arm's length, no points are exchanged. If your partner, it's within their arm reach, if they touch it or it hits them and then it goes behind them, so it bounces off them essentially, that's a point for you as the thrower. If they contain it and like it bounces off them and lands in front of them, that's no point. If they catch it, that's a point for them. So it's really just this like dumb game that I made up with my friends, but it's super fun to play during free swim, if you've got time for that. And then gate ball is when you play it with two people and you and your partner, it's like 2 versus 2, and you and your partner stand side by side, and then about like a meter, or what's a meter, like 4 feet apart from each other, and you put your arms out, and your arms are the only thing that's the goal.
About a yard.
Is it yard? Yeah. Between you and your partner, you create the goal. You are the goalpost, and your hands are the goalie. And then you take turns skipping the ball off the water and trying to get it through the goal when you can only use your hands to defend it. It's just like dumb game, but super fun. All you need to do is carry around a ball that skips off the water or get one at the waterfront. But they're two games that have like, I play them all the time at free swim with kids because I think it's just dumb fun. And skipping a ball off the water is just like, it's cool. So why not?
I've never seen those before, so I was trying to look them up on Amazon as you were describing. I was like, oh, cool, that seems sick. All right, cool. So if you enjoyed today's show, we would be so grateful if you left us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Your ratings, reviews not only tell us what you like and don't like about the show, but helps boost our rankings and helps more people discover the show.
Yeah, the best thing that you can do is just send this to a camp buddy. If you're like, oh, I saw this cool episode, or I checked out one of their past shows and it was really cool, just send it on to somebody else. We want this to get out to as many camp counselors or camp staff or camp directors as possible. And if you want to check out the show notes, you can go to gocamp.pro/FCC, and our good buddy Ryan, who edits this show, Ryan, thanks for a great season of editing, will throw a bunch of links up there for you to check out more our E.G.E.Ls and anything else we mentioned in the show.
And remember, camp is camp and camp is all good.
First Class Counselors is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, Summer Camp Leadership Training and Marketing Consultants. Thanks for listening, friends.
Hey Camp Pros, we love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, Summer Camp Professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more camp pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.